Hello, my lovelies. Happy summer solstice. So, we're going to do um, what I think is going to be a pretty juicy summer solstice reading. I knew I wanted to do one for the solstice, but I don't know, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out what the vibe was. And I actually sat down to do it last night, and the cards were very funny. Because they were for me, not for the collective, and they were basically like, "Girl, go lay down." So, um, there were a few other messages in there, but that was the main thread. Basically, don't try and do a reading right now. So, so I said okay, and I did, and I went and chilled for the rest of the night. And then again today I just felt okay. I feel like, one, now, like, this is sort of the last moment to do the solstice reading. So I feel like it's time, but it felt like there was something. But I didn't know what. And so I thought, all right, the way my brain works, I don't know if it's my personality or the ADHD or some combination therein, but I love research. I love history. I love stories. I love figuring the thing out. So I thought, all right, let's do a quick Google just on like the history of solstice and see if anything hits for me. And it did. It reminded me. So I had seen a post talking about um the sort of pagan solstice. It starts with an L. I can't remember the name, but it's a more specific practice. And it was talking about how the thing that I had read earlier in the week was talking about how even though we use solstice to mark like the quote unquote start of summer, that historically was actually the opposite. It was, this is the peak day of summer. Like, this is the peak, in the growing season, not the start of it. And that made sense to me because I've actually really struggled with this idea of solstice being the start of summer. It's like, yo, where have you been? Summer is like well underway. Stuff's growing, stuff's green, it's hotter than hell. Like, summer's been here for a minute. So that resonated with me and made a lot more sense. So I saw that in some European traditions, pre-Christian, so the summer solstice was a way of using this longest day of the year to, like, and there were rituals and whatever, but to amplify or magnify the power of the sun to help it last through the rest of the harvest, right? Because from this point on, the days are going to start getting shorter. But you need the sun to nurture your crops, right? And in that time period, like, that would have been such an essential part of survival, let alone any sort of affluence in a community. So it was like channeling and magnifying the energy of the sun from this day through the rest of the season. And that really stood out to me. That idea of, if we are at sort of a midway point and we're heading toward a harvest, how do we magnify that growth potential? How do we amplify it? How do we keep it going through the rest of the cycle? And so it said something about, in whatever little blurb I read, it said something about fire and using fire to amplify that, which makes sense. Like, the sun's associated with fire, they're both hot. But then that got me thinking about I've been rewatching this week a show that I love. It's a Turkish show. It's on Netflix right now. A new season comes out Wednesday. I'm very excited. Um, I don't know the Turkish, although I am picking up some words and phrases over the years watching it. But it's called Another Self in English. Um, it's really fascinating, and it looks at the roles of generational trauma and how they get passed down in the body and how they affect us. So it's told through um, the stories of the main characters are three women who are friends, and then their families and the people in their lives, and you sort of see um, how their histories, their family histories, have come to impact what's happening in their lives now. And so one of the stories goes back to, I don't know, it's probably the 60s or 70s, and it's a um, gypsy or Romani um, group band. I don't know the appropriate term, and I don't think they used one in the show, so I don't know what sort of the collective noun for the group was. Community. Um, and basically, at the start of that little story, they're doing this fire jumping thing. And there's this little boy, and he's like scared to do it, and his dad is, encouraging him. So the whole community's there. It's this big deal. There's a bonfire, and you gotta, run back and jump and clear it. And the thing is, I don't remember honestly if in the show, because this story is a very small piece of the puzzle. I don't remember if they explain, like if the dad explains to the son why they're jumping over the fire. I don't know, but it really stood out to me. It's just a really powerful image. So when I was reading about the solstice and whatever this fire component was, for some reason it brought that up for me, and so I looked up Romani fire jumping, just to see like what is the meaning of that tradition, and is that at all tied to the solstice. And it looks like in a number of cultures, Romani being one of them, but also Persians and Armenians, there are traditions of some sort of fire jumping, not necessarily associated with the solstice, but as a sort of purification ritual. So it's the idea of like being cleansed by fire. So by jumping the fire, you're purifying, the fire is cleansing and purifying you. And obviously that's delicious. So that by the time I got there, I was like, okay, I know where this is headed. I know where we're supposed to go. So I want to look today at, we are at this point of summer solstice, the longest, day, the longest point. I want to bring all of these traditions together. So I want to see if you're jumping over the fire today. What is that fire purifying for you? What is it eliminating, leaving behind, etc. And then, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we get into it, but I strongly encourage you to work with fire in some capacity today, especially if this resonates with you. So it could be, whatever the thing is that you're getting rid of, writing something down and burning it. It could be looking at a candle. It could be if you can have a safe bonfire, that would be amazing. Just spend some time with that purifying element of fire. So then the second thing we're going to look at is, how do you feed the light? So back to that idea of trying to use the solstice to magnify, to amplify, to harness the power of the sun, at its peak. to make it last through the rest of the phase. Now, if you want to look at this as the rest of the summer season, literally, if you want to look at this as whatever phase of your life you're in, whatever you're working on, you can adjust season appropriately, I think, for your needs. But how do you do that? Like, how can you continue to feed that light? And then the last thing we're going to look at is, hopefully less of a surprise for you. But what crop are you tending? So if we're at the midway point, we're gonna harness this light to get you through the rest of the phase. What is going to be harvested there at the end? All right, I have. We're going to start with the tarot. I think I have about 1,000,000 oracle decks out. Because you know me, I cannot get enough of oracle decks. So I don't know if we'll use them all. I guess we'll see once we get in here. And actually, I am even going to my incense just petered out, and I feel like since we are working with fire here, I wanna keep that flame burning. Literally. So let's get this guy refilled and fired back up. All right. Ooh. Yep. Plenty smoky. Okay. So settle in. Whether that's sitting up, laying back, whatever feels good. Move your torso a little. Move your shoulders, your neck. Just come back into your body for a second. Maybe a neck circle or two, and then just take a deep breath. All right. Now, as always, these collective readings are tricky, so there may be some messages here that are for you, some that aren't. Trust your intuition and your discernment to figure out which is which. Okay, what is the fire purifying? My little fire jumper. 9 of Cups. All right. Five of Swords. Ace of Wands. It's funny, I can already see the messages coming out. Spirit loves to play games with me based on how I ask questions. So I said, what is the fire purifying? And I had an idea of what I meant by that. But Spirit is going to take it in a different direction. Okay. This friggin' 10 of Coins, this 10 of Pentacles, I actually want to put it in the middle. This has been coming out. So I was shuffling the cards before I started the reading, like before I hit record, and it was on the bottom of the deck. And then as I started shuffling while I was talking earlier, it popped out a couple of times, and now it's come out again. So like this guy's hell-bent on being here. So like I said, Spirit has got some jokes. So I think it's using purifying a couple of different ways here. So I was thinking in terms of like, what are you getting rid of? But that's not always how purification works. So Spirit is taking me to task on semantics, which is fine. We'll roll with it. So, up first, Nine of Cups. So, I don't think Spirit is trying to get rid of, emotional fulfillment and satisfaction. What I find very interesting with this card is, even though it's, so it's water, but all of the cups are glass vessels. Specifically, what looked to me like blown glass vessels, which, if you know anything about glass blowing, admittedly, I know very little, but it is a process that involves fire and heat. And so I see this as a refining. So you I don't know if you've got these vessels, maybe they're started and this is just sort of fine tuning them, or it could be this is the process of creating the vessels that are going to hold all of that fulfillment. So in this case, refinement or purification, um, it's it's a process of getting the craft of getting the vessel just right. It's not getting rid of it. It's getting it just perfect so that it can hold what it's meant to hold. And what I like about this too is that, like, a lot of times all the cups are the same. They're like golden chalices or something. These are all different. They're different shapes, different colors. And so to me, I see this as different components of your fulfillment, different components of your happiness. And so this fire is giving you a space and a vessel for each of those so that you're able to hold all of the things that make you happy. You don't have to pick one type of cup, one type of happiness. You get to have all of the versions that you want. Now, I'm getting like a couple of different messages about the swords here. So, I'm gonna roll with the way that it's coming through. And obviously, as always, if you have, a different read on something that makes more sense for you and your experience, absolutely lean into that. So, Five of Swords. I mean, it's a defensiveness, but it's conflict, and it's the kind of conflict where, like, nobody wins. It's not productive. It's everybody walks away nobody walks away unscathed, I guess. And so what I see in this, oh, it looks like there's somebody I never noticed. There's somebody in the background. So this I do see as the sort of, I don't know, can we get it to focus? There we go. The more literal, what I was looking for in terms of purification. It's putting an end to whatever this is. So if you've been at odds with someone, with something, with a part of yourself, this sort of conflict where it just goes. So this image in particular, like, I'm seeing she's got all these swords, she's picking them up, she's throwing them down. This person is like I don't know if you can see them in the background, like, they're not even paying attention. I mean, they're there, but, like, they're not engaged. And so, meanwhile, she's like watching her back, and there's something really performative about her body language to me. And so I see this as like somebody, whether it's you or not, I don't know, is like really focused on every sword, every barb, every thought, every insult, every argument, and they're doing a dance. Like, this is giving me like sort of choreographed fight choreography kind of thing. and everything is like carefully constructed, but they're doing it by themselves. Like they're not actually engaging with the other person. It's all about them. The other person is literally just sitting there. Like they're not having any input. They're not reacting. Like they're just there. And so, whichever person you are, I think this is putting down the swords. And if you see, um this is an island, or a beach at any rate. It's beautiful. There are some light clouds. The sea looks just stunning. Like, we're sitting on this beautiful beach. Why are we screwing around with swords? Like, put the damn swords down and, either let's talk, let's hang out, or let's go enjoy the beach separately. Like, regardless, this doesn't need to be happening. And so I think, and I don't know if it's a biblical phrase or Shakespeare, I don't know, but the whole thing about um turning swords into plowshares. I'm losing the word. Um Basically it's like melting down weapons of defense or violence and using them for something constructive, like farming. So I get a real sense of like putting these swords in the fire, not to improve them, but to turn them into something else, something constructive, because this little sword dance is never going anywhere. I'm going to come back to the Ten of Pentacles because I feel like this is like a centerpiece card. I don't feel like it's here. Maybe that will visualize it better. I don't feel like it's part of the chronology so much as overlooking everything. So Ace of Wands. Wands is a fiery energy. Wands is the fire element. And so Ace of Wands it's potent. It is inspiration, it is creativity, it is passion. Um this card also has a strong sexual component, if that fits for you. But it is like it is on fire, in raw potential sort of way. And we've got this sun appropriately, and the rays behind it. And I think it's interesting because we're talking about like prolonging that light through the shorter days through the rest of the season, and that looks like literally what's happening here. We've got like sunset behind it, but this sun is still glowing bright. So Ace of Wands like can often be like general creative inspiration or an idea for some sort of creative project. It could be passion for a new venture. Um, Whatever this is for you, the fire um, is feeding it. So even though again, I said purifying, but I think in this way, it's sort of, if we think about a wand, more like a torch and holding the light. I think what it's doing is the fire is taking your Ace of Wands. It is giving it flame, giving it light, giving it energy, and it's burning away whatever doesn't fit or isn't necessary. So that's where the purification comes in. So this isn't all of your new ideas, every creative avenue, every thing you could be passionate about. This is like singularly focused. And so I think that's the purification coming through here, is focus. It's helping you tune out the distractions of all of the other things and ideas and possibilities, people, whatever it is, and just focusing singularly. Um, and that's not to say, I know we talked about with the Nine of Cups, like having these different things that make you happy. So that's not to say that like your whole life is going to become one thing. It's saying it's focusing this specific creative, passionate energy in one direction so that it can bear fruit, so that it can be useful. Um, and again, you'll have a better sense of what that is, and if you do some sort of fire ritual, if you're not sure, you're trying to decide, that might help you find that focus. Um, and then I think I'm seeing something similar here, and I think it's appropriate that these cards go together. I'm seeing a similar use of the flame for this messenger of swords. So here we were melting the swords into plowshares. Here it's the opposite. The fire's being used more judiciously to hone the blade, to refine and improve and sharpen the blade. And so Messenger of Swords is going to be new ideas. So, and hold on, I want to look. I just got this great new book and about tarot, and I've not been through a good chunk of it, but I'm being called to look because I think there might be something about this. And by the way, Messenger, here is Page of Swords. Um, okay. So this could go two different ways. So the way I was originally seeing it was a little bit more of a new idea. And it could be, but I think, and this is where the book came in, it's more about moving from knowledge to application. So, like, if you've been a student, either literally or figuratively, and you've been learning something, the Page of Swords is now putting that into action. It's now going into the job. Leaving school and now getting the job and doing the thing. And so I think paired with the Ace of Wands, that's giving us, we've got this raw creative potential, and we're going to focus it, in this one particular area, and this is going to help us apply that. Because the thing, I love Wands energy, especially from like a creative standpoint, but like to me, Wands energy, it's also kind of chaotic, right? Like Wands energy is not your plan, it's your fuel. And so swords, that that is the thinking, that is the, some of the structure, the planning that goes into that. So I think these two together, you have this incredibly potent force. And then the Page of Swords is going to help you apply it. So it's interesting because all of this to me feels like earlier stage or middle stage at least. This isn't the finality or the finale, which makes sense because we're talking about like midway through the journey. And so the image that I immediately got with the Ten of Pentacles is back to the sort of molten idea of fire. That's how coins are made, right? Like the metal, whatever it is melted and then formed into coins. And so similar to the Nine of Cups, what I see here is like this purification is forming the coins that will be your sort of ultimate abundance and fulfillment. It's not giving them to you yet. It's literally the fire by which they are made. So I'm really curious to see how this will play out in terms of when we get to like what exactly are you harvesting. I do want to see. Let's do one card. I feel like it wants to be a mushroom card. Let's see. To elaborate on what the fire is purifying for you here. So I feel like this gives us a whole story. Sometimes with the oracles, you can get like the opposite. If the tarot's giving you like a whole story, sometimes the oracles will give you like a finite one or vice versa. Okay. So endings. Let's take a. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm gonna take a quick scan to see if any words pop out. Okay. So it's similar to the death card in tarot. So yes, it's endings, but it's also new beginnings. Don't be alarmed and don't let fear or negativity in. Everything is as it should be. Know there are greater things at work here. Don't resist what is coming. It is time to take your hands off the steering wheel and let what needs to fall away do so. Which I think goes back to that Ace of Wands, but that description really reminds me of the image from the TV show of the little boy, like trying to get up the courage to jump over the fire and like being afraid and resisting it. And it's like at some point you just got to do it. You just got to like run, hold your breath, and go. You can't be, it's like learning to ride a bike or that's the image that's coming to mind right now. But like there's certain things where it's like you can't be in your head through the whole process or you'll screw it up. Like you can think through it and then you just need to go and let your body do the rest. And so I think there's something here about I do think, especially with this card, there are some endings, or there have been some endings, and this to me is less about the endings are happening now. So I think it's more likely that you've already encountered some sort of ending. And what this is telling you is like the fire is part of that process. It's purifying the ending. It's moving you through that, but you have to take a deep breath and jump. And get over that fire. Okay. I think I'm gonna pull. We're really gonna test my memory here. I'm gonna pull all the cards back because I'm being called to, and I feel like we could get possibly some interesting echoes from putting them back in the deck. And I don't want to just like use 3 different decks for the 3 questions. 1, because it'll just get extra chaotic, but 2, this is the deck that was really coming through to talk before the reading. So I wanna leave this guy in the driver's seat. So okay. How do you feed the light? So we have cleared the fire. And now we're looking at how do we harness the power of the sun, the fire, this life-giving force through the second stage of summer or growing. All right. that makes sense. So we're asking how to stoke the fire, and we're getting wands. So that feels on the nose. Okay. Alright, I feel like more and more. Okay. Again, I don't know why I want to keep putting that last card in the middle, but that's how it keeps appearing. Like that's what it wants to do. So we're gonna go with it. So Two of Wands. It's interesting because, this is asking about how to extend the light. And these cards, at least these two for sure, but they're nighttime. So there's a bit of darkness there, and this has the moon phases. Um but a couple of things. So the imagery for this woman is presumably alone at night out in front of the pyramid somewhere. She's cool as a cucumber. She has no concerns. She doesn't seem like lighthearted per se, but she's confident, determined. She doesn't look at all worried. So I think there's something about, as we go through the second half, whether it's the second half of summer or the second phase of whatever cycle you're in, there may literally or figuratively be some darkness, whether it's, you're just struggling through this phase, or, realistically, let's be honest, nights are hard. The world quiets, our brains and hearts can get loud. So whether you're dealing with like loss, heartbreak, fear, uncertainty, that shit gets loud at night. So, I think this is encouraging you to have a sort of calm demeanor through that. And then if you notice, she's looking forward. So I think that's also part of it, is just keep looking forward. Don't look back. Which is funny because like she's got the pyramids behind her, which are like literal historical monuments. They're huge. She's not looking at the pyramids. She's not looking at the past. It doesn't matter how big and important and like all consuming it is. It takes up the whole frame. She's not looking at it. She's looking forward. So I think it's really important, especially at night. Keep looking forward. Don't look back. But the Two of Wands is also the card of planning. And so I think with this same confidence, she's planning for what's next. She's not looking in the back to, consult, to double check things. She's looking forward, and she is planning, sort of confidently. Her head covering, her hijab, stands out to me. And I don't know. It feels almost like it's containing her thoughts. And I mean containing in a restrictive sense, in a good way. Like it's keeping her thoughts in line. But hijabs are also worn, as a sign of piety, and religious devotion. And so I think there could be a message here, I mean, if you do have a some sort of religious component to this, that could speak to it, but it's more about um sort of spiritual deference. Like, she acknowledges a higher being that she serves or, works with, trusts in some capacity. And I think there's something of that here, like acknowledgement of there is something else in charge, and you are working with, serving, or the honestly the read I like the most is sort of under the protection of that thing. So then the headscarf also becomes sort of protective. Um, Another thing, so if I'm remembering correctly, black absorbs light. So that would be interesting too, because it would mean that her head scarf is absorbing light. So I don't know. There's something going on there. Pick what works for you. But basically, she's planning. So to extend this sun energy, you need to look forward. You need to plan. Um, and again, this even though the scene is grand, you don't see her like summoning a caravan or ordering a boat or doing anything grandiose, but she is clearly looking ahead. She's confident, she's planning. So it doesn't have to be like drastic. It's just keeping your eye ahead and planning, not dreaming, not hoping, planning. Three of Wands. I was just reading a different interpretation of this card. Um, and so I'll give you a couple, and you can sort of see what fits for you. It's often looked at as the sort of like your ships coming in card, like they're not there yet but you can see them. But I don't get that interpretation in this. um Obviously this person is on a journey, but if you look, like, it does not look like there's an end in the immediate future, right? Like, they're still on on the journey. And so, but there's this sun over them. Um and something about the dimensionality of the collage, it feels like the sun is directly over them. Sort of like a cloud following a cartoon around. Like, it doesn't feel like the sun is off in the sky in the distance. It feels like it's directly over this person. And so I think there's something about keeping the sun with you, in an energetic sense, so some of this work for how to extend it, how to keep the potency of the sun, is to keep nurturing it within yourself. So that could just be your mindset, like trying to stay optimistic and focused on what you're working toward. But that could also just be like actually spending more time with the sun, from like a devotional standpoint, or just like a physiological photosynthesizing, get that vitamin D standpoint. But there's definitely maintaining a connection to the sun. And I think it's interesting too that this is the only wands card where the wands look quite like this, but they look like an extension of the sun. So, to me, this person seems to be using the wands as sort of like walking sticks. And so it's like, how can you use elements of light, of sun, of creativity to keep you walking on your path? So these aren't the sun. It's not the totality of the sun. They're just fragments. They're just reflections, of that sun energy. So it's like, if you're trying to keep, say, your creativity going, you're working on a project and it's long. Um this is like sitting down to it every day for a little bit even if you're just looking at it, they're just looking right now, they're not walking. So maybe it's just looking at the project, taking it in, being with it energetically. That counts. So it's finding these little moments to keep showing up with that sun energy, with that creativity, with that passion. um Even if, one, you're not moving forward exactly in that moment, but also, like, to me, this is very much, you don't have the full scope of the journey yet. You don't know exactly how long it's going to take, exactly where your path is going to go, exactly what you're going to encounter. So, like, there's a lot of unknown here. But I think there's such a brightness to this person's robes. Um, these sticks, I'm looking closer, they're definitely like shimmery gold. So I I still think what I think about connection to the sun. Um you don't know where you're going. You don't know. I mean, you do, but like you don't know the specifics. And this is showing up and continuing to keep that fire lit along the steps of the journey, just sort of trusting the path. And the thing I like about the eyeball in the sun is, to me, that's giving the sun um some sort of like agency or personhood. The person's being watched over by the sun. So whether you see the sun as like actually the sun, as creative and passionate energy, whether you see it as God or the universe or source, or, like whatever you want to attribute that to, there's something both watching over the journey, lighting your way on the journey, but also seeing the little steps that you take. So like those little things count. Um, moving on to Messenger. So again, we're back to Page. So I think it's interesting. Again, we've got pages twice, but this is Page of Pentacles, coins, in this one. And so this is usually, like starting fresh, learning a new skill, approaching things like a student kind of thing. But it also has a strong manifestation energy. It's starting, planting. It's not necessarily harvesting the thing, but it's the so usually the pages are like younger, sort of more optimistic versions of the energy. And so this to me is the very much like anything can happen. We can create anything. We can manifest anything kind of energy. And I think I really like the playfulness of this opposed to the seriousness of these. So like even though I interpret this Two of Wands as very positive, like she's confident, but like I said, she's serious. She's not like lighthearted. And so to have this sort of playful energy, I think that's really important, especially if you're not really sure where exactly the path is going, how long it's going to take, what you're going to encounter. Um, you know, look at the sun behind her. So we want to talk about like nurturing that sun, this playfulness and whimsy. And I think there's a faith in this card, because that's the thing about manifesting is like, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole about manifesting because like it's complicated and there are also societal structural realities that deeply affect how that plays out. But the idea of manifesting, there is a faith that it's possible. Like nobody sets out to manifest and say, well, I'm going to manifest this thing, but it's not actually possible. Like, no, the whole the whole exercise assumes it is possible. Maybe not probable, maybe not easy, but possible. And so that's this energy to me, is like anything's possible. And holding on to that energy, even when things are unsure, when they're dark, you know, when they're far away. I also think it's interesting, depending on your age. She's got a bit of a grunge vibe going on here. She's got like, I mean, they're work boots, not like army boots, but still, she's got a plaid flannel tied around her waist. So 90s or grunge could in some way be significant to you. Maybe you just like flannel. But yeah, there's something about this playful energy. Let's see, she's got some flowers, a coin, and there's a feather, and she's sort of dancing through this forest. Now it's interesting, her head is sort of facing the past, but her eyes are closed. She's not looking at the past, she's just sort of dancing and moving, and she's definitely headed forward. And when I look closer, it's definitely sort of nighttime here. And again, she's got the sun. So it, it's the make your own kind of magic energy. The way to keep the potency of the sun is to be it, um to keep creating that energy within yourself. It's not just gonna like come down and be bestowed upon you. Um so Eight of Cups I find very interesting. Because it is normally just a sad kind of nostalgia card. It is usually, there has been some kind of ending and you're just reflecting on it. It's memories, but not like in a constructive way. Like, to me, it's more about like sort of swimming in those memories. Um, Hold on, I'm double checking because this is another card I just read a really interesting interpretation of in this book, and I wanted to see. Um, oh, that was it. Okay, so um, the book was saying, which I thought was interesting, but makes sense, especially given this depiction. The Eight of Cups process, that sort of like going through things and letting go, can be really subconscious. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like I'm actively working on letting go. Um, Although I think, given some of the other cards, like for a lot of you, you probably are actively working through that process. But the thing about this is like the endings already happened for sure with this card. So again, sort of like the endings death cap mushroom in the previous question, this isn't telling you an ending is coming. So don't, this is you processing what's already there. And for me, this deck, this Eight of Cups specifically, is very dreamy. And I mean that like literally. Like, this is the kind of stuff that happens in your dreams. Like, you're at an ancient temple and the earth is somehow floating through the door, and also there's a peacock, and then there are all these globes of roses floating around. Like, this is the stuff of dreams in the subconscious. So I think, whether actively, whether in your sleep, whether, just sort of in the software running in the background, you're metabolizing a lot of feelings. You're processing a lot of feelings. And I think like just being aware of that is helpful, because when you're, when you're having some of those nights where things are a little hard, remember, even if you're not aware of it, but especially if you are aware of it, you're processing a lot. So give yourself some grace and don't take it too seriously. Like, don't take the heaviness or the darkness too seriously. Look at it as just part of the, sort of emotional metabolic process. Um, but then I also think, if you are going through this more consciously, you are working through things more consciously, know that like that is serving this growth, that is serving you, keeping, the fire going to nurture whatever it is you're working on. So even if it feels dark or nonsensical, like this is incredibly fluid and nonlinear. Like where's point A, where's point B? I have no idea. Like what's up, what's down. I think even that is up for grabs. So this can feel, I think, destabilizing, especially because you've already been through the part where like there's an ending and now like you're just swimming in all these feelings and it's like, okay, but what am I supposed to do with them? Where are they supposed to go? And this process can feel really amorphous, really vague and weird, and like, am I doing the thing? Am I not doing the thing? I don't know. So just know that like it's supposed to feel that way, and that this is serving, your overall process. And regardless of whether this is conscious or not, that um that process and letting go of your feelings, um it's a necessary part of the overall journey. So Four of Pentacles, I know people often read this as like stinginess. Sometimes I do, but not usually with this deck. It has a very different vibe for me in this deck, and so I'm gonna stick with my reading because I think there are reasons that this deck wanted to come out. So for me, this Four of Coins, Four of Pentacles, is an intentional and cooperative use of resources. So it's Pentacles, so there could be material resources at play, but it's also like earth earthly bodily things. So like for me, this is sleep, this is water, this is food, this is exercise, this is structuring your day, this is like just the earthy mundane things of being a human. And the way he's working with them, it's very intentional. He's balanced, and it may seem precarious, but he's not wobbling, he's not unsure. And I think he's sort of seated on that middle one, but he's doing an intentional twist. He's holding that coin above his head. Like there's nothing struggling about this posture. It's intentional and it's fluid. There's a lot of movement in this for me. And so I think there's an encouragement here, whether it's your material resources in a financial sense or not, to work with what you have in an intentional, sort of cooperative way, because that's the thing. He's using the size and shape and weight of the coins as they are and working with it. He's not trying to make them something different. He's working with what he's got. And I think this is very much a sort of co-creative energy. It's working with what you've got, using it smartly, but it's also moving. Like, and that's why I think this depiction is so important. There is a movement in this card, that I think is really important. So if we think about how to keep the fire, the sun going, there's a movement piece. And so for some of you, that could be literal movement. that could be like the somatic process of continuing to move your body and feel what you're going through. That can just be walking, yoga, dance, body work. There are lots of different ways that could come out, but there's a movement involved. But it can also be keeping things moving, keeping your life moving. So if, you're at a position where you're not entirely sure where things are going and how it's going to look, like, to me, this is actually the opposite of stinginess. It's not saying go blow money you don't have, but it is saying keep money moving, keep the energy, keep the resources moving, keep things flowing. Don't stop while you're waiting to see how this is going to go, how it's going to pan out. So even though both of these figures do seem sort of paused, um I feel like the motion we get here, even in the Eight of Cups, like I said, there's a real fluidity, everything's floating. That motion is really essential to keeping things moving. And if you think about the energy of the sun, of fire, it is moving. That is not a static energy. Fire doesn't stay still. So, whether that's literal movement or just keeping things in your life moving, I think that is going to be an essential part of this phase. Okay, now I want to use at least two of these decks. Let's see. This sort of how you feed the light. I really love oracle decks that give you, like, I don't know, something that just feels more practical and tangible that you can lean into, whether it's an energy or an action. I don't know. That just always really helps me ground and, like, what am I doing? What am I focusing on? So this is I think it's Ancient Stones. Yeah, Ancient Stones Oracle. Let's see. Some guidance on how you feed the light, how you magnify the sun during this process. Amplify. Yeah, I like that. Amplify. How do you amplify the power of the light or the sun going forward? Okay. Let me pull out the book here. So a couple of them were peeking out, but I think this is the one that wants to stick. And I feel like I'm supposed to read this one. It's coming together precision, from Stonehenge in England to Newgrange in Ireland, and from the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, that's why, to Chichen Itza in Mexico. Across the world, you'll find temples, monuments, and stone circles built by ancient peoples in precise astronomical alignment with the sun and stars. The alignment card is a wonderful one to receive. It's a sign that things are really starting to sync for you, a physicalization of the flow that's coming into your life after a period of building. It's likely you've been working toward this for some time. So again, that sort of planting, tending, harvesting, or that you've recently made some decisions that have started to have a real impact. Whatever you've been focusing on, the cosmos is aligning in your favor and things are beginning to click into place. Perhaps you've decided to focus on what really matters to you, making decisions from what feels congruent rather than what the outside world told you to do. Perhaps you've made some significant changes in your physical life to bring it into harmony with how you've changed on the inside. Your ideas, dreams, and visions are coming together. Okay. There's also a thing here that says celebrate and claim your space. So I'm going to come back to that. But I think there are a couple of things happening. So, like, obviously, it literally talked about the pyramids, and then we're sort of echoing that here. And the pyramids may have some significance for you, or looking into the pyramids. There may be something there for you as well. But what I find really important here is perhaps you've decided to focus on what really matters to you, making decisions from what feels congruent rather than what the outside world told you to do. So, back to the Ace of Wands from the previous bit, that refinement, that purification. So, this is sort of affirming that by allowing that focus, by allowing yourself to pick what really matters for you, whether it's that Ace of Wands sort of creative, passionate pursuit or just more generally. But I also think there's really something around what feels congruent rather than what the outside world told you to do. That's really standing out for me. And, these cards, we have very solitary figures. And I think that's, I mean, even this, like, there's no person in it, but it's like floating in space. So I think there's really something here around, in order to amplify that sun energy, it's not saying isolate yourself. It's saying know yourself and be true to what makes sense for you without the input of a bunch of other people. Like, this is really getting clear on what you want and making actual moves and decisions that align with that. So there's something here about perhaps you've made some significant changes in your physical life to bring it into harmony with how you've changed on the inside. For some of you, I think that is like very specific and literal. So that could be splitting from people, friends, partners, family who are toxic or aren't aligned with your values and how you're trying to live. It could be making major lifestyle changes. So that could be like sobriety, dietary changes, screen time, deleting social media, going more analog, like those kinds of things, like actual changes. It could also be something like moving. Again, it could be out of a toxic or unsafe area, or it could be moving somewhere that is more aligned or closer to things that matter to you. But there's something here around, and I think this gets into the Two of Wands. Remember, I said like actual planning, not just like daydreaming. This is like concrete plans. This is taking actions. And so I think this is affirming the need to actually do those things, and that is keeping the energy moving, and that is going to fuel your sun. That is going to fuel that energy for you. But you have to be willing to take those actions. But I think, again, doing it with that Page of Pentacles energy of like anything's possible. So when we're making those major changes, sometimes it can feel heavy and it feels more like a loss. But this energy is like, no, like this is just the start. Again, back to the death cap mushroom. It's an end, but it's a beginning, and like anything is possible. So just leaning into those changes. And then I said I'd come back to celebrate and claim your space. There's something about your physical environment here, and claiming it. So, I think if you've moved or are planning to move, like that's particularly true. But I think it could also just be redecorating in a way that feels more harmonious and aligned. And I say redecorating. This isn't a like consumption thing of like go buy a bunch of crap and redo your whole place. No, it could just be rearranging the things you have in a more intentional and thoughtful way. It could actually be getting rid of stuff that you don't need, that is, physically and energetically cluttering up your space. It could be tending to your garden or your plants in a way, um, that definitely brings in that sort of like harvesting energy, but like helps you nurture and claim your space. So there's something about like your physical space somewhere. Um, okay, and then I have this other oracle. It's called Feminine Wisdom. The deck is obviously written for women or uh, female presenting folks, but it's definitely not exclusive to. I really think that just affects the imagery. So don't get caught up by the pictures on the deck. We're just looking for energetically a little bit more guidance on how you can feed and amplify light. Okay. Let's see if another one wants to come out. I mean, that one definitely does, but I'm not sure if we have anything more. That one feels a little bit obvious to me, so I want to see if there's anything a little bit more of a surprise. Okay. A spirit took my challenge. I'm not gonna bother with the book for these. I think they're pretty self-explanatory here. But so this one is consistency, confidently repeating the patterns. So you see this woman doing yoga in beautiful sort of spring field. So this gets back to the Three of Wands. So remember when I was saying like if it's a creative practice, it's showing up every day to the thing. Even if you are just taking it all in and assessing where it is, you're showing up and doing the thing. And that's very much this energy. It's very much that Four of Pentacles too, keeping things moving. So and I think this aligns very well, like back to the initial, sort of overall solstice analogy of like if we're magnifying the sun from an agrarian, like farming standpoint, right? Like we're trying to get the most out of our crops. Like farming is incredibly diligent and methodical. You have to keep showing up and doing the things over and over and over again. And most of the time, you can't see what's going on, but you have to keep showing up and doing it, and the outcome of your actions, good or bad, is often not seen for a really long time. And so I think that's the point here, is that there's a lot of uncertainty here, right? Like she's planning at night, looking into the future, not sure what's there. This person is looking over the mountain range, not really sure where they're going. This guy is floating around with his pentacles. She's in the middle of a landscape with her eyes closed, kind of looking to the past. This is floating through space. There's not a lot of certainty here, and that's not a bad thing. But the point is, you have to be consistent. That's how you keep the sun going. Is so like in this case, if you think of the sun like an engine, you have to keep putting fuel in it. You have to keep feeding it. And then this one says sisterhood, community, strong connections. So, if you're a woman, it could be, close female friendships. But I think really regardless, it's community. So community can be one family member. It can be one really good friend. It can be a network of friends or family. It could be um some community club or activity or something you're involved in. Like there's so many ways for this to look, but and I think it's interesting. So this woman is pregnant. The women all look very different, but they're there together. And the center one is like holding up the moon, and the other two are like holding her arms and supporting her. So it's just this idea of whatever you're going through, having someone or a group of people to hold that space with you. whether it's preparing for a new season, helping you hold up something heavy, dancing, in the dark. Maybe the Bruce Springsteen song means something for you, but it's just that sense of togetherness in whichever way it shows up. I also think it's interesting that we're back to very clearly at nighttime. And I talked about how sometimes the night gets, nights can get hard, nights can get lonely. That's where some of our, worst thoughts and fears tend to come up. So this could be suggesting that, like, community, whatever that looks like for you, is a way of balancing out some of that darkness. Um, and keeping, this is literally, they're holding the moon, they're holding the light. So that's really beautiful. Okay. We are down to the last little nugget here. So let's find out. You have purified, you have jumped right over that fire. You have done the hard work of, sort of keeping that fire, keeping the sun going, for the rest of the season, the cycle, the summer, whatever that looks like for you. So, what this whole time, like, the metaphor we've got here is that we're amplifying the sun to maximize our harvest, our yield. So what crop have you been growing this whole time? What has been blooming under the surface, and hopefully what are you gonna harvest on the other end? So let's see what crop you are tending. So Spirits got jokes. The sun. Actually, really love that. Let's see what else. Wait, what was that one? Oh, jeez Louise. So I find this very interesting that the cards are, like, jumping out in a very chaotic fashion. And I have thoughts about why that is. Okay, I want to do these guys in the middle. Well, here, we'll do it like that. And then I think this was roughly the order they came out in. I really feel like there's one more, though. Which is funny, because, like, that's plenty of things for one harvest, but, see if we got one more or not. Just feels like it. Okay. So this card, the Cosmic Seed, is unique to this deck, and I will read the book for that one since it is a bit different, but so the reason I feel like the reason these are split up. So this is a sort of bigger picture, because I think this is a more literal what the crop you are tending, what you're trying to harvest. This is sort of what you've set out to do a little bit more, and or just sort of reasonable byproducts of that process. This you didn't know about. This is sort of like, it feels like, honestly, like gifts from the universe for how you've shown up through this process. So you were focusing on trying to do this, but what you were actually doing, unbeknownst to you along the way, you were learning the sun. You were learning a few things. So you were learning how to stand in the light, I think. So, and that can mean a lot of things. So the light is attention, it is the spotlight. And that can be really uncomfortable. It's also like actual visibility, letting yourself be seen. Um, but then it's also allowing yourself to just feel it, like aside from other people, allowing yourself to feel the sun on your skin, joy in your heart, love, like just allowing that. And I love, we've got these little fiddle, I'm drawing a blank on what they're called, fiddle somethings. You've got these great little flowers growing, and it's like you're learning how to unfurl in the sun. Um, but what we know from the last spread as well is you're also learning how to sort of tend your own light and how to keep that going. So yes, there's an external sun, literally and figuratively, where that energy exists in the universe, but it also exists within you, and you're learning how to tend to that and use it to grow beautiful things and to allow yourself to bloom. And I think that's really incredible. And then the cosmic seed is a very similar energy. I feel like it sort of underscores, I feel like the universe does that sometimes, especially when I have a reading of something that's maybe a little bit different than what someone would expect, like I just did with the sun. It'll give me another card that's like, I said what I said, that sort of underscores what I was saying. The cosmic seed is the seed of infinite potential. It exists in the quantum realm and can move between dimensions and realities in all directions and through matter. It is the intelligence from which all ideas and things are created. This card is a reminder of your superpower. You have access to the infinite in every moment. What are you creating with your thought, power, and influence? So I mean, I think you were either learning or remembering through this process that you are infinite, and you do have the potential to create, to be anything. And we've got that little sort of dandelion seed floating there in the center of the card. And when you look at a dandelion seed, it looks pretty unassuming and vulnerable. But they are hardy as hell, and incredibly potent medicinally. And they're just happy and beautiful to look at, in all seasons, whether it's their bright yellow flowers or, their little puffballs of seeds. And so I think you've just been learning your own cyclical nature, and the potency that you have, you know to imagine, to grow, to harvest, to be, um and that whatever the circumstance is, um you can get through it, you can create, you can manifest, you can change, you can grow and build something new. um So I don't know. That's one hell of a harvest. I feel like this is sort of superfluous after that, but like let's go through it anyway. So what are you harvesting? So the action of coins, that is the Knight of Pentacles. And so Knight of Pentacles is slow moving in a good way, though. It's like that knight is steady, diligent, persistent, making sure everything gets done right, but like knows their own mind. Um, you know, loyal, isn't gonna just change their mind. So I think for most of you, like, this could be a material thing and just sort of how you're approaching your life. So, and I mean your life broadly, but also just in a, like, professional, home, your pinnacle areas. You're approaching them with diligence, with patience, with understanding. Like, you have a plan, but you're not rushing things. You know things will happen in time. You trust the process. um I don't know, there's just a steadiness to this. um but I think it's interesting. So even though this is the Knight of Pentacles, when I looked at it at first, I was thinking Knight of Cups, between the moon and just this watery vibe. So I don't know, I get a really strong emotional and intuitive component to this too. So it could be, sort of, and we've got this sunset in the distance, so we've got the fire. So it could be a sort of syncing up of those different energies in a methodical, trusting kind of way. For some of you, it could be a person. It could be um the work that you're going through, and what you're clearing and learning, personally, opens you and your heart and your world up for um somebody steady, somebody loyal, somebody who's not in a hurry, who wants to see something grow. Liberation. So I love this one. I'll read from the book, because when there are different words like that, I feel like there's often a reason for it. So this is the equivalent of Judgment in this deck. Rebirth, Forgiveness, Awakening. The card of spiritual awakening and freeing the soul. Throw off the limiting pressures of judgment from self or others. There's that again. And unfurl, like I said with those guys, into your divine self. This is a sign that it's time for self-forgiveness, that a deep awakening is upon you. You're understanding your wholeness and sovereignty and connection to all. You're having a spiritual level up, which may come with emotional and physical release. You are worthy. Know thyself. So I think it's interesting that she's sort of blooming out of this flower, under the sun. Um, for some of you, this might be a literal liberation, from, it could be a bad relationship or bad relationship patterns. That could be romantic, familial, platonic. It could be habits. It could be ways of thinking, ways of living. It could be a job. It could be all of the above. I think some of you are like going, you're redoing the whole canvas. But there's a real sense of unfurling here, and that you're free from what was there before. What I think is really interesting, just looking real quick at the imagery sort of across the cards. So these have, the moon, and this is often space, and I don't want to lose that. Well, I guess that's the moon as well. Um, but it feels like the coloring of this feels very much like dusk or dawn. Um, and so it's, if you want to think of it at the end of the cycle, but I don't know, I get dawn, it feels like dawn to me. So sort of the dawning of the new day. It's the sun's not fully out yet. There's just a little bit of light. She's just coming out of her little flower cocoon thing. She's not like buzzing around all wild and crazy. She's just sort of unfurling and feeling out her wings. So this feels like it's just getting started, in a really, really beautiful way. So Six of Swords, that is moving to calmer waters. So I think especially after, this trial by fire, this looks kind of nice, going somewhere where it's rainbows. And I also think there's something with these two cards together about the struggle. So I don't think this process has been easy for you. And so I think there's going to be some relief in knowing you're going to get to a point where it's not all struggle. And they're going to be rainbows. Now, is it going to be all rainbows? No, life doesn't work that way. But like, you are going to have a sense of, I've left one difficult way of being, and I am now in a more peaceful way of being, an easier way of being, a more aligned way of being. Um, Messenger of Cups. So this is our Page of Cups, who always entertains me. Like, lots of attitude with this one. And I love the little goldfish. So Page of Cups, like, this is open heart. This is, so again, we were talking earlier about pages and that sort of like innocent, naive energy in a good way, like that open faith. So this means, like, I feel like love and feeling, this is just an openness and a curiosity and a faith. Not a blind faith, but not carrying all of the baggage and wounding of the past wherever it may have come from. So goldfish have notoriously short memories. Um, and so you're letting go of the past stuff. This is also making me think of Ani DeFranco's album Little Plastic Castles. So the imagery is like a goldfish bowl with a castle and a little goldfish. And if I remember correctly, I think her face is like superimposed onto the goldfish, in a way that you could have only done in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, the lyrics from that song, they say that goldfish have no memories. I guess their lives are much like mine, and the little plastic castle is a surprise every time. Um, there's something about that. There's a there can be a delight in that, and that's the energy that I'm getting here, is like everything is new again. Everything is fresh and promising and novel, and again, with the sort of whimsy of, you know uh youth. um and I feel like we get that energy from the figure also dancing. You know, very fun clothing. We've got these great little bubbles floating around, which don't appear anywhere else. So there's just a fun. Um, oh my goodness! Apologies for the extra sound effects here. Um, the cat always chooses interesting moments, but I don't know. There could be something to that. I don't know if she's affirming that, or um, yeah. But anyway, so this messenger or page of cups, just a real open-hearted, playful, willing to be surprised and delighted, and almost like, so kids generally, like, they can be hard to please, but they're predisposed to being pleased. They don't expect everything to go wrong. They don't anticipate all the ways something could go wrong. They don't anticipate all the ways somebody could hurt them or screw them over. That's, something as adults we learn to do from our experience. So I think there's something here about that, like being open to letting people surprise you pleasantly and not expecting everything to go wrong, not expecting everyone, to behave like your ex or your parent or, whoever it is. And I think there's something to the way he's facing the past, and this sort of like his body language and gesturing feels sort of flippant to me. So like again, it's that like thumbing your nose at the past kind of thing. Like you learned your lessons, you're not dumb, but you're just not carrying the weight of all of that. And I also think like that cup isn't very big. You can't carry that much. There isn't room for it. And then finally, High Priestess, my girl. I love her. I think this this ties in with the messages above, because I think what you've been learning through this process, especially because we talked about how solitary some of it is and how you've had to pull away from others, but you're leaning into yourself. You're leaning into your intuition, to your own wisdom, and learning to trust that. And I like that that's like the final card of this spread, because it's like that's what you're landing on. Whatever else happens, you know how to trust yourself, and you know that you'll figure out a way through it. Even if back to that 3 of Wands, even if you're like standing at the mountain range, you don't know where it's going, you'll figure it out. And that makes me think of, she's got that owl. So like, you'll send the owl ahead to check out the terrain and you'll figure it out. So I think that is just a beautiful thing to come away with. And I think too, like thinking about summer, solstice, days, sun, all of that, and then ending sort of this last card at night. Um, you've been through like the sun, the daytime, it's beautiful, but it's also, you can't hide anything in the sun. You're fully exposed. It can be scorching, that heat, that intensity. And now you're in the dark coolness of the moon, having learned all of those lessons. And now you're able to navigate, whether it's the day or the night, the sun or the moon, whichever type of energies, you trust your ability to navigate it and figure it out. I still have a couple oracles out. And as much as I'm sad to like not use them, because I really do love the oracles, I think that's the message. I really do think that that's it. That's the crop. You don't need to know any more about it. And I think what's really helpful too for you to keep in mind is like, so going back to the previous question, the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands, and when, it's night, when it's dark, when you're not really sure, when things are feeling heavy, or even the Eight of Cups, to know this is where you're headed is really helpful. To know that you are getting to a place where you know how to navigate those weird spatial emotional waters that don't seem to have a beginning or an end. You know that you're going to a part of life that has less struggle. You know that you're letting go of things and healing your heart, so it's going to be able to open up to new things. You know that there's going to be freedom, that there's going to be steadiness, reliability. You know that you're learning how to shine your own light and how to exist in the light, how to create anything you need to create. Like, knowing where you're heading, I think, can make the journey a little bit easier. So, um, hopefully, this, even though this is what crop you're tending, hopefully, this also helps light the way for you, helps you sort of magnify that sun energy as you go through the process. And again, I really encourage you, do something with fire today, something constructive and safe. But find a way to tap into fire, because it seems to be very much the catalyst for this journey you're on. It's really lighting a fire, lighting a spark. So lean into that. Happy solstice. I wish you the best of luck on this second phase of the journey headed toward harvest. And I will see you again soon. Bye.